Applying special right triangle, section 5.8. Last section of the chapter here today. Okay, again, applying these special problems to right triangles. The first one we're going to talk about is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Now, a little review here. What type of triangle is that? If you were to classify that triangle, what type of triangle would that be, Troy?
Right.
A right isosceles triangle. Notice that, it's isosceles. So what you notice about isosceles triangles, the angles are the same, but also the lengths are the same. Now, here is the special rule. The triangle, both lengths are congruent, and the length of the hypotenuse is the square root of 2 times the length of the leg. It is a special rule. Okay, so for instance here, if the legs are 8, my hypotenuse is 8 square root of 2. And that is true every time for, 45, 45, 90 triangles. Another one, if my lengths are 23 and 23, then my hypotenuse is 23 square root of 2. Okay, now to simplify this, to make this a little bit easier so you can visually see it, here's where it comes from. Let's say I put a triangle up here. Let's say I give you both of these legs are 1. Okay, and I ask you to find the hypotenuse. Using Pythagorean theorem. We could all use Pythagorean theorem, right? This all stems from Pythagorean theorem. I would use 1 squared plus 1 squared and set it equal to x squared. Does everybody agree so far? Okay, what's 1 squared? 1. So I get 1 plus 1, which is 2. So I get 2 equals x squared. And then I always need to take the square root, and I would get the square root of 2. It all stems from the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, that's where this comes from. So the shortcut says, well, when you know that, you can just multiply by the square root of 2, and you get your answer. But what happens if I'm given the hypotenuse? Well, if I'm given the hypotenuse, instead of multiplying by the square root of 2, now I need to divide by the square root of 2. So now I divide by the square root of 2. But what happens here, and this is where we kind of have to use some math properties, is I cannot divide by a radical. Can't have a radical in the denominator. So what happens then is I need to multiply by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. Essentially that's multiplying by 1. Does everybody see that? Because 2 over 2, it's going to be 1. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 really gets me the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So what happens here is I get 10 square root of 2 over 2, which is really just 5 square root of 2. Now, what can you notice about the relationship? What's the relationship between 5 square root of 2 and 10? It's half and then the square root of 2. That's kind of the shortcut here, the way to think about it. Either way, it works for both of these. Okay, and again, these are special rules. If you are really super confused in the special rules, then you could just use Pythagorean theorem and you can find all your answers as well. Just takes more time. Okay, so let's try some of these. So number 17. Oh, sorry, number 1. I have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. I have this leg is 17. My other leg over here would also be 17. Which means my hypotenuse would be what then, Troy? 17 square root of 2. That's the same thing. That is the answer. That's fine with that hypotenuse. 17 square root of 2. That's it. Alright, next one, number 2. This one is 22. What's my other leg over here going to be? My other leg is what, Noah? 22. Which means my hypotenuse is what now, Noah? 22 square root of 2. Good work, sir. All right, number 3 is kind of the tougher one. Number 3 is the tougher one because there's no square root of 2 on the hypotenuse. Okay, there's no square root of 2 on the hypotenuse here. So my answer is 4 square root of 2. Nice job. That is correct, ma'am. That is correct, ma'am. And again, what do I get? How do I get that? I take 8 divided by 2 along with the square root of 2. Okay, so 8 divided by 2, square root of 2. And that's where I get the 4 square root of 2. What about number 4? So I have 25 square root of 2. That is my hypotenuse. Recognize that as the hypotenuse. So my legs are actually going to be length. What do you think? It's 25. It's 25. Do you see why, Tom? There you go. Okay, so 45, 45, 90. You kind of got to think of it's the rule of square root of 2. Okay, we'll get some more practice here in a little bit, but that's kind of the rule of square root of 2. Now, 45, 45, 90s are not the tougher ones. The tough ones are the 30, 60, 90s. Okay, there are special rules here. Quiet down, please. There are special rules here. Now, listen. In a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the length of the hypotenuse is 2 multiplied by the length of the shorter leg. So it's twice the shorter leg. And the longer leg is the square root of 3 multiplied by the length of the shorter leg. For instance, if the short leg is the one that's always opposite the 30 angle, which we've talked about that before. Short angle, opposite short side. Long angle, opposite long side. If that is 5, then the long leg is 5 square root of 3. And my hypotenuse is then 10, because I am doubling it. Same is true on the other one. I have 11 square root of 3, and then I have 22. Okay? It is on a 30, 60, 90 triangle, everything kind of always stems from this smaller side. Notice, 5, if I take it times 2, I get my hypotenuse. 5 times 2 is 10. If I take it times the square root of 3, I get my longer side. Same is true here. I have 11. 11 times 2 is 22. 11 times square root of 3 is 11 square root of 3. That's where I get these. Okay? I can make up a problem. So for instance, let's say I have a that's a terrible triangle. Let's say I have a 30, 60, 90 triangle here. Does everybody agree? This is my short side. Again, you can see the short sides. Let's say my short side is 2. What does that make my hypotenuse then? My hypotenuse is going to be 4. My hypotenuse would be 4. And then my longer leg would be 2 square root of 3. Okay? Now here's the difference. Here's how I associate them. 45, 45, 90. Notice there's 2 different lengths, right? Because it's an isosceles triangle. So 2 different lengths I associate with the square root of 2. 30, 60, 90 has 3 different lengths, so I associate it with the square root of 3. That's kind of how you keep them separate between the 2. Now again, the same thing here though. What happens if they give me one of the longer legs and I don't have the square root of 3? Okay, well then I do the same thing as a 45, 45, 90. I divide by the square root of 3. Okay, and again, you can't have a radical in the denominator. So what do you notice about the relationship between these two? What do you notice about that? What's kind of a shortcut way to think about that? How do you get from 12 to 4? Divide by 3 and tack on the square root of 3. That's how it works. And then how do you get from 4 square root of 3 to 8 square root of 3? You take it times 2, which is what we do here. Okay, the hypotenuse is always times 2 of the shorter leg. Okay, let's try a couple of these now. Okay, number 5. Number 5. What am I given here? Am I given the short leg, the long leg, or the hypotenuse? I'm given the what, Camden? I'm given the hypotenuse. What's it always easier to find? I always kind of want to find that short side first. The short side's always the easiest one to find. So what would the short side be, Camden? 9. X equals 9. Good work, sir. Because the short side is always half the hypotenuse. That is 9. Well, if that is 9, what's my longer leg going to be then, Johnny?
18. Wait. Oh, 9 to 3?
9 square root of 3. Okay? So this one would be 9 square root of 3. And again, why is that? Because it all stems from the smaller side. It all stems from the smaller one. Okay, good work, sir. All right, number 6. I'm given the short segment. I'm given the small side. Again, why is that the small side? Because it's the one opposite the 30 angle. It's opposite that small angle. So if the small side is 2, what's my longer leg going to be? What is x going to be? What do you say, Noah?
2 square root of 3.
Good work, sir. 2 square root of 3. Which makes y, what is y going to be, Bryce?
4.
Y equals 4. Okay. Number 7, I'm telling you right now, number 7 is kind of the tougher one. It's okay. What am I given in number 7? I'm given the hypotenuse. I always want to stem, and everything always stems from that shorter side. So if the hypotenuse is 24 square root of 3, what would my short side x be? Who thinks they can find what my short side x would be? I think some people are saying it. What do you think? 12 square root of 3. How did I get that? I took it divided by 2. Does everybody see that? You get x because you would take 24 square root of 3 divided by 2. Now, how do you find y? Y is kind of tricky here. Okay? Why is y tricky? Because you need to multiply by the square root of 3 again, right? So what happens here is I get 12 square root of 3 times the square root of 3. Right? I have to associate the square root of 3 again. So then, what's 3 times 3? 9. So this is really 12 square root of 9. But what is the square root of 9? I get 12 times 3, which is y is 36 there. Okay? Y is 36. And again, I can associate all of those back to that square root of 3 rule. 8, again, 8's a tougher one. I'm given the longer segment. Okay, 8's a longer segment. So if I look at 8, I'm going to go back to the last slide here. If I'm looking at 8 here again, I'm given the long segment here is 33. This would be a problem very similar to this bottom part here. Okay, this would be a problem very similar to what we did right here. Okay, and again, recognize, if it was 12, my short side is 4 square root of 3, what was kind of that shortcut? I need to divide by 3 and then multiply by the square root of 3. So if this is 33, so if my long leg is 33 here, I need to find x. X would be 11 square root of 3. Nice job, sir. X is 11 square root of 3. Is that what you're going to say, Johnny, or do you have a question? That is awesome. And now, once I find that shorter segment, what's my longer segment going to be? What's my hypotenuse going to be? It is 22 square root of 3. Very good. And again, for those of you who wondered about that 11 square root of 3, I would look back at x. If I have 33, that comes from dividing by the square root of 3. Again, can't have that radical in there. So I multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. 3 times 3 gets me 9. Oops. So I have 33 square root of 3 over the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is 3. So 33 square root of 3 divided by 3. And that's where I get that 11 square root of 3. Nice job, Mons. All right. Again, biggest thing, 45, 45, 90, we use square root of 2. 30, 60, 90, we use square root of 3. 3 different sides, 3. 2 different sides, 2. Okay, that's how we kind of keep them different here. Try these 3. Take up seconds. These are now 45, 45, 90s. So let's recall the 45, 45, 90 rule. Try these 3. All right, let's walk through these. Number 9, I have the legs are 2 and 2. My hypotenuse would be what then? Tom, what do you say?
2 square root of 2.
Nice job, sir. That is 2 square root of 2. Number 10, if my hypotenuse is 4 square root of 2, my legs would then be what, Anna? 4. 4 and 4. Nice job. Number 11. Number 11's a lot easier if you just look at it, right? Everybody knows about number 11. It gives you the other leg. So what's x have to be there then? Keegan? 10. Nice job, sir. Yeah, that one's actually a lot easier because they give you 10. So, well, the other one has to be 10. Okay? All right, take a couple seconds to try these 2. Now we go to the 30, 60, 90s. Now it's the tougher rules. Everything kind of stems from that smaller side. Try these 2. Number 12. If my hypotenuse is 8, x is going to be, what do you think, Tyler? X is 4. Nice job, sir. And if x is 4, y is going to be what, Frost? Nice job, sir. 4 square root of 3. Again, recognize everything comes from that smaller side. You always need to find that smallest side first. Number 13. Oh, it gave me that long leg and it's got the square root of 3. We can do this, though. What is the shorter side going to be? Nick, are you raising your hand or stretching?
I'm raising my hand.
What do you got?
7.
It is 7. Nice job. Yeah. Again, recognize that relationship there, which makes y then. What is y going to be, Bryce? 14. Good work, sir. That is 14. Okay. All right, now we're going to put it all together. Try these 4. So now you got 45, 45, 90s, and 30, 60, 90s. All in the same here. Make sure you keep them different as to pose which one uses square root of 2, which one will use the square root of 3. Try these 4. These are a little bit tougher. Same idea, though. You still got to use your same principles of the relationships. Number 14. The leg is 8 square root of 2. What's that mean the hypotenuse is going to be, Troy? It is 16. How do we get 16? Because you take 8 square root of 2
Times 2? No.
times the square root of 2. Because I associate the square root of 2 again. 2 times 2 is 4. 8 times 2 is then 16. Okay, so reckon that's where we get the 16 from. Number 15. I have 10 square root of 3. Let's find y first, because y is actually easier to find. What would y be on this one, Nick? 20 square root of 3. Because I need to double it, right? So 20, just keep the square root of 3. Now I find x. Okay. Find x is very similar to finding 14, actually. What do you think you'd be, Max? It is 30. Nice job. Where do I get the 30 from? Because it's 10 square root of 3 times the square root of 3. 3 times 3 is 9. So you get 10 times the square root of 9. Square root of 9 is 3. 10 times 3 is 30. Okay. Number 16. 2 square root of 2. What do I get for my legs? What do I get for the legs there, Gabe? 2. It's 2 there. Okay, because I'm given the hypotenuse there, so now I just tack off the square root of 2. All right, 17 was probably the tough one. 17 was the tough one. We had to do some division. You had to do some work here. What was 17? What is x on 17, Tina?
I got 6.
X is not 6.
Why is it 6?
Because it isn't. I'm not given the hypotenuse.
Oh.
I'm given the longer leg.
What do we have to do then?
So, Caitlin, what is x? X is 4 square root of 3.
4?
Where do I get 4 square root of 3? Because it's 12 divided by the square root of 3, which is really 12 square root of 3 divided by 3, right? Because then when I work that all out, I get 12 square root of 3 divided by 3, which is then 4 square root of 3. Which then makes my hypotenuse, what would my hypotenuse be then, sir? 8 square root of 3, because then now I double my short side. Again, you have to notice what you are given. You have to notice, when am I given the hypotenuse, when am I given the longer side? The 45, 45, 90s are easier than the 30, 60, 90s. 30, 60, 90s. Let's keep track of it. Here's your assignment.